What's going on, y'all? Riley here, and today we're going to be taking a look at my comic haul from, January, December, and I think even part of November, so stay tuned. Alright, so like I said, we got a big haul covering like 2.5 months worth of stuff. I will mention that some of my January orders are still in transit at the moment. A lot of it is manga, so it would be for not a comic haul, but it'll appear whenever I do my February video at the end of this month, or maybe I'll do a small haul video in the middle. We'll see what happens. But anyway, it's been a while since I did one of these. I just kind of lost track of time, and I think I actually filmed a haul video with most of this stuff and just never loaded it onto my channel, unfortunately. But instead of, a smaller haul and another smaller haul, we just get one giant one with a lot of stuff to look at. So anyway, without further ado, let's just dig on in and check out what we've got for the last couple months worth of haulage that I took in. So I'm gonna separate everything from publisher. And at the top of my stack, I've got 3 from some smaller publishers, non-Marvel, non-DC stuff. So first, one book from Image, and that is Criminal Deluxe Edition Volume 3. This is something that a lot of people have been really excited about, because not only did we get Criminal Volume 3, but we're also getting reprints, new editions of 1 and 2, that are going to be from Image, so it's not going to be with the old Marvel Icon logo on there, so it'll match on your shelves with this, as well as the recently released Cruel Summer hardcover. Now, this and Cruel Summer are basically companion pieces, as this collects all the material that was not in Cruel Summer, and likewise Cruel Summer collects all the recent Image published criminal material that was not in this hardcover. This collects a couple of one-shots, and then I think it collects one of the graphic novels, the Junkies graphic novel, and then a couple of issues of the 12-issue ongoing criminal series that Image published back, I believe, in 2019 or something like that. So this is a cool volume. I'm looking forward to being able to grab the new Image editions of the first 2 deluxe editions, but in the meantime, having this and Cruel Summer on the shelf is really awesome. Moving on, we got one book from Boom, and that is Klaus. This is the 3rd volume of Grant Morrison's ongoing Santa Claus series. This collects 2 more one-shots. So this is Life and Times of Santa Claus. It collects the Klaus and the Crying Snowman, and also the Klaus and the Life and Times of Joe Christmas #1. The Joe Christmas one was pretty cool, because it's kind of, you can read it backwards and forwards. And it tells kind of 2 sides of the same story depending on how you read it. Just check it out for yourself if you're a fan of Morrison. I always enjoy picking these up. They're always great little Christmas stories to have. I was just kind of disappointed that with this volume, I know that I'm not talking about it until beginning of February, but it wasn't released until just after Christmas, which is a shame, because it would have been really awesome to have a 3rd Morrison Santa Claus book to read during the holidays or leading into the holidays. Anyway, and then we have one book from Dark Horse, and this is actually a release that I missed when it first came out, and luckily Dark Horse is pretty decent about reprinting their library editions, and so I was able to score a copy of the World of Black Hammer Library Edition Volume 1. This contains the first 2 of the Black Hammer spin-off miniseries, so this one has Sherlock Frankenstein and the Legion of Evil, as well as Dr. Andromeda and the Kingdom of Lost Tomorrows. Dr. Andromeda was originally called Dr. Star. That title was changed. I don't know, maybe someone in the comments will know the answer, but I imagine it's because it was way too close to Starman. There was a lot of similarities that very obviously Jeff Lemire was drawing upon. Either way, 2 really great miniseries in here, and this is just the first volume of the World of Black Hammer spin-off stuff. We have Volume 2 coming out pretty soon, I think this month, and then Volume 3 has already been solicited. I wouldn't be surprised if Volume 4 has already been solicited, and I just can't remember. But they're moving forward pretty quickly with these Black Hammer library editions, which is awesome, because I absolutely love this world that Jeff Lemire has created with the Black Hammer books. If you haven't checked them out, I highly recommend them. At least pick up the first paperback, just so you can get a taste of what those comics are like. Now, let's move over to my DC stack of stuff. We're going to start with the non-DC Universe stuff. The first thing on this stack is a Vertigo title. This is Promethea, the 3rd oversized hardcover edition of the Alan Moore series with the artwork by J.H. Williams III. This is something I've been greatly looking forward to. I love both Moore and J.H. Williams. Both of them are fantastic creators, and together this is something that I've been really excited to read. I am still a little bit bitter that I believe it was called the Immateria edition, was never published, and that, for anyone who is not familiar, which might be a lot of people at this point, was going to be an all-in-one edition of Promethea that was presented in widescreen format, so that basically every one of these spreads, these 2-page spreads, which pretty much the entire book is those types of spreads, was presented across one page. So it would have been a very awkwardly sized book compared to everything else that you would have on your shelves, because it would be double the width. But it would be really nice to be able to see every single double-page spread without worrying about any sort of gutter loss. Anyway, that one has been, I think that was supposed to be about 10 years ago, and they canceled it. So I doubt that it'll ever happen, but hey, I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe someone will hear me and I can wish upon a star and it'll happen one day in the next 10 years or something like that, but we'll see what happens. One more thing, we have part of the Sandman Universe Classics line of Omnis. This is the Books of Magic Volume 1. I was kind of off on the fence about grabbing this because, I'll be honest, I'd never read any of Books of Magic before, but I decided to go ahead and jump on it. This is the first of, it'll be, I think, 3 volumes total, collecting... Yeah, it says on the back, first of 3 oversized omnibus, collecting the entirety of this series. So like I mentioned, this is stuff I haven't read before, but we have some really great creators involved. Of course, Neil Gaiman writes that initial 4-issue miniseries, then we see John Nee Reiber take over, and then we have some artwork from creators like Peter Gross, Peter Snijberg, I probably mispronounced that name, and then we have the cover by Chris Bacallo on here is really great. I believe that's Bacallo. I don't think I'm wrong in saying that. Yeah, I think that's a signature right there. But anyway, I'm really excited to have this, and I hope that DC continues to do this whole Sandman Classics line of omnibus editions, because this is really awesome to have on the shelf next to Sandman and Lucifer, but it'd be great to have some of those other things like, you know, House of Mystery and all that kind of stuff. The Dreaming would be a really awesome one, because I don't think the Dreaming was ever collected. Anyway, moving on, one more DC title that's not part of the main DC universe, and that is Injustice Omnibus Volume 2. Of course, the Injustice comics were a digital-first series that were based on the stories, or based around the stories from the Injustice video games, but the stories were actually popular enough and well told enough that I feel like a lot of people are more familiar with the comics than they are the actual video games. Of course, we have Tom Taylor writes about half of this, and then Tom Taylor pretty much writes the first omnibus, and then we see Brian Buccellato come in to do a lot of the material that's in this book. And then I think Tom Taylor comes in again to write the Ground Zero storyline. This contains Year 4, Year 5, and Ground Zero. The 5 years of Injustice are meant to be the story that leads into the first game, and then Ground Zero is supposed to be the adaptation of the actual story of the game from the perspective of Harley Quinn. And then they did have an Injustice 2 comic adaptation, which was also written by Tom Taylor. And I'm hoping that that entire storyline gets contained along with the more recent Injustice Year Zero storyline that Tom Taylor was working on into one Injustice 2 Omnibus edition. So anyway, this is really awesome to have. I'm really glad that DC decided to do these omnibus editions for Injustice, because I really loved reading these as they were coming out several years ago. Now we're into the DC stuff that is part of continuity, and I've got one paperback edition. I don't get many paperbacks anymore, but this is part of a line that I'm definitely excited to have, whether it be paperback, hardcover, or whatever, and that is Batman the Caped Crusader Volume 5. We're getting really close to having these paperback editions catching up to basically Nightfall, which I think is the ending point for these things. Caped Crusader and the Dark Knight Detective paperback editions are both lines that are collecting Batman and Detective comics during the post-Crisis era, prior to all of the different Batman crossovers that started basically with Nightfall. And then after Nightfall, most of the material from both Batman and Detective is collected in one way or another. I did say most because there are exceptions and shorter amounts of material that haven't been collected yet. But with the way that DC's been doing things, I wouldn't be surprised if we were to see some more hardcovers or paperbacks released collecting additional stuff. Anyway, excited to have that. We have one from the New 52, so moving quite a bit ahead in the Batman continuity. This is Nightwing, the Prince of Gotham Omnibus. This contains the entire New 52 Nightwing series where he does don the red and black costume as opposed to the typical blue and black. This leads into Tom King and was it Tim Seeley? They did the Grayson series together, so this leads into Grayson, which happened during the latter half of the New 52. So this has all 30 issues plus the annual, and then also has Batman number 17 stories, Grayson stories from Secret Origin number 1, Young Romance, a New 52 Valentine's Day special number 1. So a lot of material in here. Kyle Higgins has really made a name for himself, especially doing the Power Rangers material more recently over at Boom, and I've really been loving that stuff. Of course, he hasn't been involved with that for a little while. He's been doing, what, Ultraman over at Marvel, and then I think he has a new series over at Image that he started up. But yeah, Higgins has been doing a lot of great work, but this was one of the first times where he really went off and started doing his own thing. So if you enjoy Higgins' work, this would be a good item to pick up to kind of see where he started. Because before this, I think he was only as a co-writer to Scott Snyder, because he was a student of Snyder at Snyder's, Snyder teaches writing classes, and he's taught people like James Tynion and Higgins, and then Marguerite Bennett is another person that graduated from Snyder's class. But he co-wrote like Batman Gates of Gotham with Snyder. So anyway, I've talked enough about Higgins and Nightwing. Another Batman book, speaking of James Tynion IV, we've got the Batman Rise and Fall of the Batmen Omnibus, and this is a really thick, fat book here. This collects the entirety of James Tynion's run on Detective Comics from Rebirth, so following the New 52. So this has Detective Comics numbers 934 to 981 because, of course, they didn't, they kept the legacy numbering whenever they did Detective, and I think also Action during Rebirth. It also has annual number 1, and then it also has the issues of the Night of the Monster Men crossover, which is a pretty crappy crossover. I'm just going to put that out there, but it does collect it all here. That's Batman 7 and 8, Nightwing 7 and 8, and that crosses over with a couple issues of Detective Comics. We also have stories from the Robin 80th Anniversary 100-page Super Spectacular number 1, and material from Detective Comics 1000. This is mostly a Batman team book. It doesn't focus so much on just Batman himself. It focuses more on the Bat family, so we get a lot of focus on Batwoman, even though she spins off into her own ongoing series from this, and also has a lot of focus on like Tim Drake as I don't think he was going as Robin still, but Tim Drake does get focused on a lot in this book as well. I think Spoiler and Orphan get some time in here, and then it also is known for having Clayface join as part of the Bat family. It was a really fun book. I really enjoyed this this run when it was coming out. I had a great time reading it, and I was happy when they announced that they were going to be making this nice fat omnibus edition of all that material. One more DC book, and this is another one that I was really excited about because honestly a lot of people just figured this was never going to happen, and that was Justice League International Volume 2. There were some major issues with one of the creators that works on part of this book, and that led a lot of people to believe that this was just going to be canceled, scrapped, never going to get a second volume. But eventually it got solicited, and I think it got canceled and then resolicited, but here we are, finally in hand. This is something I've been waiting for quite a while because I've been a fan of the Justice League International series, but until now, most of the material in this volume and the material that would be in the subsequent third volume has not been collected. So this is going to be really awesome to be able to visit some of these stories for the first time for me, and then revisit that stuff for a lot of people who were collecting this back when the singles were coming out. But for me, I only had the paperbacks, which they canceled after Volume 6, which was really disappointing because I was really enjoying that run with all of these different Justice Leaguers that didn't really get focused before this. It wasn't the A-list team that you're used to, that you got from like Morrison's run whenever they took over eventually on JLA. It was a lot of lesser known characters, a lot of lesser popular characters, and then you would have like Batman come in for a point of that. I do have some content that I'd like to make specifically surrounding this book, so I don't want to talk for too long about Justice League International. I'm hoping in the future to do a video talking about the Justice League International series and my mapping for the potential third and final omnibus. Now, with that out of the way, let's move over to my Marvel stuff. I've got a pretty decent sized stack here to get through. So on the top, we've got an oversized hardcover, and this is a much newer one from the beginning of January. Always an Invader. This is Chip Zdarsky's Invaders run. This is all 12 issues in one hardcover volume. I don't buy that many of the oversized hardcovers anymore at this point, but I did want to get this one because it is an all-in-one story. It is self-contained here, so I don't believe that this would wind up getting reprinted anywhere else. It's not something that we would see combined with more material to make an omnibus edition. But this is a great story dealing with, you get Captain America, you get Bucky in here, Namor is in here, and then Human Torch and Toro. It connects a lot back to their years as the Invaders, as you know the title suggests, always an Invader. This is one of the series where you really got to see Chip Zdarsky move from being the writer that he was back on like Howard the Duck and then on Spider-Man, and then this is where you really get to see him moving towards becoming a lot more serious of a writer, which I think is emblematic of where we see him now in the current books that he's writing. So I do recommend this one, especially if you're interested in those Invaders characters, if you're interested in those war era characters and stuff. This is a nice return to those characters and has flashbacks to that era. Next, I've got an omnibus that is basically just a glorified oversized hardcover, and this was actually the subject of a video I did not that long ago where I had discussed which Marvel omnibus was the least worthwhile, I guess, as far as cost per page. And it was inspired because this book was coming out. Now, this is the Marvel Cosmic Universe by Donny Cates, and while yes, it is a rather thin book, and it does have a rather high price point for how many pages it has, I did calculate that this was, I think, what, number 5 or 6 as far as the worst price per page of all Marvel Omnibus editions. So it's pretty bad, but it's not the worst. It's far from the worst. But I really love the content in this book, so I didn't mind double dipping into collecting this. This does have the Thanos Wins story arc. It does also have the Cosmic Ghost Rider story, and then we get the Silver Surfer Black story, as well as the Death of the Inhuman story. All 4 of those storylines all collected in this one small omnibus edition. This is kind of the beginnings of a lot of what Donny Cates was doing over at Marvel. I think aside from this, prior, he had really only done Doctor Strange, which is also in its own oversized hardcover. The second omnibus, eventually, I would imagine, has his 12-issue run on Guardians of the Galaxy, and probably also contains his Thor run, which I don't know when it's going to wrap up. He hasn't said anything about that. But his Thor run is very cosmic oriented, so it wouldn't surprise me to see that included as part of his whole cosmic omnibus book and stuff like that. This also does loosely connect to the material that's taking place with his Venom series and Null and the whole King in Black storyline. So if you enjoy what he's doing over there and you haven't read his cosmic stuff yet, I do highly recommend it, even though it does have a higher price point. You can find the paperback editions for all those stories for pretty cheap, so if you want to buy those individually, you can always do that instead of paying for the pretty overpriced hardcover edition. Next, I've got a run that I really enjoy, and I was really happy to see this put into an omnibus edition because I'm a huge fan of this character, and that is Dan Slott's run on She-Hulk. She-Hulk is a character I absolutely love. I'm a big Hulk fan, and I'm also a big fan of all of the Hulk's spin-off characters. I also really enjoyed Dan Slott's run on the character. I think it embodied a lot about what makes her special, what makes her an interesting part of the Marvel Universe, because not only is she a great superhero, and not only is she a great kind of, I don't know if I'd say foil for the Hulk, because she doesn't come with the same emotional baggage that the Hulk does that kind of causes him to not be able to control his anger. She-Hulk is also a lawyer, and a lot of the stories here are based around her practicing law in relation to superheroes and supervillains. So it's a very interesting storyline. I really enjoy it. I think it has a lot of fun stories, a lot of fun characters. Dan Slott does a really good job here, and I'm hoping that we get more She-Hulk omnibus editions in the future. Next up, we've got something, I really don't read much of this character at all, but I've heard so many good things about this run in particular that I wanted to at least give it a try, and that is Kurt Busiek's run on Conan. Kurt Busiek? It's always a name that I tend to mispronounce, I believe. Anyway, this collects the entirety of his run on Conan the Barbarian, originally published over at Dark Horse. So this is the first omnibus edition that we've seen published by Marvel with Dark Horse material. We are going to be getting more stuff in the near future. There's a Star Wars omnibus coming out with some Dark Horse stuff, and then we also have the Alien and Predator omnibus editions coming out at some point in the near future. So this kind of started the trend of Marvel publishing Dark Horse stuff under their Marvel Omnibus banner. So in particular, this collects issues 1 through 28, 32, 39, and 45 through 46, as well as Book of Thoth 1 through 4. I know a lot of people have mentioned, you know, they're upset that it just doesn't collect everything all the way through, but people that I've talked to who know more about Conan and know more about the Conan material from Dark Horse basically have said that if this was successful, they're going to do a Tim Truman omnibus down the line. So this definitely was successful. It sold out pretty quickly, so I would imagine that they do the Truman material eventually in its own omnibus, and if that does well, they'll probably continue to release more Conan omnibus editions with the Dark Horse material. I still haven't gotten a chance to sit down and read this yet, so I don't know if I'm going to continue and buy any more of the Conan stuff. I wasn't crazy about the classic Marvel stuff, if I'm being honest, but we'll see. We'll see what I think about this one whenever I do get a chance to sit and read that. Next up is something that is it was one of my most anticipated books and one of my favorite books that was released recently, and that is the New Mutants Omnibus by Chris Claremont. This is volume 1. We should have a second volume to wrap up Chris Claremont's run, and if those two volumes, which I know this one sold out and was super successful, if the second one is successful, I'm sure we'll get a third volume going into Louise Simonson's run. This is one of my absolute favorite series of all time. I am a huge X-Men fan, and the New Mutants are without a doubt one of my absolute favorite teams, and this is one of my absolute favorite books of all time. I cannot stress how much I love this series, especially when Bill Sienkiewicz comes on to do the art. His art is seen on this cover. It takes it to just other levels. When you do the Demon Bear saga and the introduction of Legion, I love this series so much. I'm so happy that we finally got this in an omnibus edition, and I think it's such a beautiful book. It definitely lives up to all of the hype that I gave it in my own mind. And if you're an X-Men fan, you've never read New Mutants, if you're a fan of Claremont's era of X-Men, you really do owe it to yourself to pick up that book if you can. Next, we've got the two most recent things that I've received as far as omnibus editions go, and that is, first off, the Infinity Crusade omnibus. This wraps up the original Jim Starlin Infinity trilogy. Now, I do want to do a video in the future where I talk about the Starlin Infinity material and kind of a couple of, I guess, wish list omnibus editions that I want to see published in relation to the Infinity Trilogy, because whereas the Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War, and Infinity Crusade omnibus editions were pretty exhaustive as far as collecting all the tie-ins and stuff, there is some important material that's in between those books that hasn't been oversized yet, and I'd like to talk about that stuff and kind of give an idea of a book that we might probably see, I'm going to say probably, in the future. So don't think that we're done with Starlin's Infinity just yet. But I did go for the standard cover here because as much as Platt is an awesome artist, I'd rather have the one that kind of represents the story of the book rather than having Spider-Man and Moon Knight on the cover, even though I do love both Spider-Man and Moon Knight. And that brings me to the Moon Knight Omnibus. And I did go for the Bill Sienkiewicz cover on this one. This is a bunch of the classic Moon Knight material. This is volume 1, so with the fact that this one's done so well, this one is a really hot seller. A ton of copies of this book have gone out, both of the standard and the variant covers. I'm gonna say that it's very, very, very likely that we do see a volume 2 of the Moon Knight, and that would collect, I think this one collected all the material from the first 2 Epic collections plus a little bit from the third, so that would collect the rest of the third Epic collection and then go into some material that I believe has not been collected before. So I'm a big fan of the character of Moon Knight, but I've not read much of the classic stuff. I've read mostly just all the modern stuff for the character. So being able to dive into a lot of this stuff for the first time is really exciting for me, and I do hope that I'm correct in saying that we're going to be getting more of the material. Also, I really love how this looks like just a standard black and white omnibus spine, but the text is that Moon Knight logo text. It's just slightly different from the standard Omnibus text that you get on the black spines and stuff, but it works so well in this case. I love the way it looks. This is a great looking book with a lot of awesome artwork, and Moon Knight's such a great character. I'm glad that he's finally getting the Omnibus treatment. So anyway, that is everything we got. That was, like I said, January and December, and I think some stuff from the latter half of November. So a lot of awesome things to look at, and a lot of awesome stuff that's coming out in the near future as well. Thankfully, the next couple of months this month, February, looks like it's going to be a little bit lighter, or a lot lighter than what we saw back in like December and stuff like that. And January was also pretty light as well, so the only things that I have coming in are just going to be, I think, one DC paperback and then a bunch of manga, if I'm being honest. And then, yeah, it's going to be pretty light as far as the hauls go, which is fine with me. It makes me have the ability to catch up on stuff, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. I was happy to finally be able to sit down and do this haul video. Like I said at the beginning, it's been a while since I've done one, but thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was entertaining. Let me know what of these books that you grabbed, which one of these have you been enjoying, what have you been reading lately. Comment down below with all that stuff. And if there was anything that you didn't grab that you saw me grab here and you saw me talk about, did I make you excited for something that you hadn't picked up yet? Let me know in the comments down below what you're thinking about, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.